Starting. Hello. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to the Be Seen in 2015 Summit. Lisa Murray is with us, the lovely Impeccable, and I can't wait to talk about other things that relate to showing up fearlessly in your business, which is really what this whole summit's about. So just to start very briefly, I'll just kind of tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Amanda Nazal. I'm a branding photographer and a DIY photography guru. I teach bloggers, creatives, and entrepreneurs how to show up, be seen, and also create really beautiful visual content. And I was really interested in this work because as a photographer, I had a lot of people who were coming to me talking about really being afraid of sharing, either sharing their own photography or being afraid of being seen in their photos and what it was going to be like and how it was going to show up in their biz and all that stuff. So that was the inspiration for the summit. And I found all these wonderful women who work in this creative field of, getting rid of the blocks and finding ways to show up. And that's how Lisa and I found each other. And that's why we're here today. We're here to talk about ways that we can get rid of all the BS and allow ourselves to show up in our businesses. So I guess I'll just let you kind of take over and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do. So go ahead.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, so my name is Lisa Murray, and I have a business called Creativity Lab, where basically I offer you creative edge clarity around what you're creating, how you're creating, and actually how to create it in ways that creates more in the world. So it's like a really fun business actually to play with because people always have ideas, but they don't always know what to do with them. So my job is to help you work out what to do with them and to explore that and play with that and bring beautiful things into the world.
Lovely. I love that. So when it comes to your business, I know whenever I first met you, we talked about this briefly about what was showing up for you in terms of blockages. What were those main things that were happening for you?
Yeah, when I first started, I have another business as well, a business coaching business. And when I first started 8 years ago, I did not want my name on the internet. I did not want a picture on the internet. That would have just been outrageous. Yeah. And I had to go through a really big process, actually, of getting to a space where I was happy to actually do those things because I started business coaching. I didn't like cold calling. I didn't want my name on the internet. It doesn't leave you that many other options, And it's been really interesting, and I'm really grateful actually because it's shown me so much of actually who I am, because of course who I thought I was and who I actually am were two different things.
Yeah.
And so once you get closer to who you truly are, then none of that actually matters anymore.
Mm-hmm. So I love what you're saying about getting closer to who you truly are. How did you discover that? Like, what were the kind of things that kind of brought you in alignment with figuring that out?
Yeah, well, I guess one of the first things was I had questions because I was like, okay, well, why don't I want to be seen? Once I got past the initial sorts of things, I was like, what's going on here? And, that has been what I'd call a slow unraveling over the last 8 years. And probably the last piece of that puzzle has come only really recently, where now it's just fine, like whatever, I really got no point of view about any of it. But it took quite a lot. And I think one of the first things was, I just didn't think I was enough. I thought I was less than everybody. And so when you're in that space, you don't want people to look at you. Yeah. So, yeah, and it was interesting, that you're a photographer, because I think one of my first sort of pleasurable experiences with this was with a photographer who shoots a lot of really famous people. Mm-hmm. And he was so comfortable with just allowing me to be me, that there was no judgment there. And so, of course, I actually got some good photos, probably for the first time in my entire life. Yeah. And that was really exciting, actually, because it was just, I had so much judgment of myself that no photographer could get past it.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Like, you're right, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, that's something that I feel like whenever I was first starting out in photography, it takes a lot to learn how to hold space for somebody and learn how to direct them, like what it sounds like this photographer was able to do for you. And when you can finally, I think it takes, on the photographer's end, it takes them being very comfortable with themselves, being comfortable in their craft and their creativity in order to be able to say, okay, I understand that you're feeling insecure. I understand what it feels like to be totally vulnerable in front of me and in front of the camera. and eventually in front of the world or wherever you share these photos, but it's okay. It's okay to be yourself. So I love that.
And what was interesting was this guy didn't actually ever say a word to me, but he was just being so present that I couldn't actually hold on to all that stuff, which was really cool, because he never actually made me feel like I couldn't do it.
Mhm.
So that was really interesting. And I think there's this thing in that like, if you stop judging yourself, and for me, one of the easiest ways to do that has literally been just to have gratitude for who I am.
Mhm.
And as that's evolved, of course, it's got easier and easier. And look, there's so many things. I think one of the other things that's helped me a lot has been writing, actually, because when you write from a really vulnerable space, and at some point you get more willing to put that into the world because you can see that the world requires what you're writing, then some of those layers also fall away.
So what things in particular were you writing? Like, were you doing, was it a gratitude practice in writing, or was it just kind of like free flow journaling, or what was that exactly?
Yeah, good question. The gratitude practice for me always was so boring. I was just like, I'd rather be grateful in the moment,
Yeah.
So not so much that. What I would write was, in a way, a form of journaling. I was really asking myself a lot of questions, and not so much to find the answers, but really just to open up the possibilities and open up the energy. And so I would write sometimes to let things out, but sometimes just to discover more of who I am. And that for me over the last few years has been really amazing, just to allow that space to be and to not have to do it for anyone else, actually, literally just to be me. And like, I never write with the point of view that I'm going to put it in the world. I write for me first. And then once I've done that, then I choose if it goes into the world or not.
Yeah.
And that has been a really useful thing, to actually just play with that and see that, there's a whole lot more there than I ever realized, basically.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like I remember in the same vein of what you're talking about, I remember hearing Tony Robbins say that your life was the equivalent of like the type of questions that you ask yourself all the time. So if you're always saying things like, why do I feel so ugly in front of the camera? And why do I feel like crap right now? And why can't I put anything out? Then the universe kind of responds to that, right? But when you start asking yourself better questions, like, what can I be grateful for today? And what one thing do I love about myself when I look in the mirror? Or what's great about this writing that I just created? Then all of a sudden, you're saying, like, you're clearing out the energy, right? To kind of start allowing the space for more of those great things, including the confidence to come along with it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting what you just said, because I don't know if you realize this, but for the so-called negative side, you used a lot of why questions, and I never use why questions, because why pretty much round in circles. Whereas if you use the what, like what's possible, what else can happen here, what can show up, who can I be? Those kinds of questions may not have as clear-cut a kind of answers, but they're actually really useful from the energy of creation, because it's like when you ask a question, it opens up a possibility. And so for me, it was really like, I'd got to a very shut down point in my life, actually, before I started my business. And so a lot of that was just opening up all the possibilities. And I continue to do that, It's always just like, what's it going to take to outcreate myself today, That's fun.
Gosh, you know what? I'd never thought about that why point before. That's so interesting that the just small differentiation between like what versus why can make a big difference.
Yeah, because mostly people are looking for an answer and a reason with the why, like they're trying to work something out, whereas the what questions actually take you into the space of what's possible, which is such a different energy, and it's for the future rather than the past as well. And I learned this through Access Consciousness, and I'm really grateful actually for those tools, because it changed my life dynamically. So yeah.
So like you mentioned Access Consciousness. Can you tell people a little bit about that kind of and how that relates to all this?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very interesting because they actually have a class called Right Voice for You, which is all about putting your voice out in the world. And I did it a few years ago, not realizing initially that they'd expect me to sing. And oh my gosh, I cried all the way through the first song I sang in front of the people. I was just so terrified, basically, because I'm not really a singer. But, it was such a gift, because I realized from that I didn't die. I wouldn't die of it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think my not being visible was I felt like I would die of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful to the girl who did that, because she said to me, yeah, just come and you can talk. And then when she got me up in front of everyone, she made me sing. And I was like, talking was no problem,
Yeah.
but singing was a whole other thing. And I went to the point where I actually was able to sing in front of 150 people badly and actually be okay with it. Yeah. So these tools really allow you to be more of you. That's the thing I would say about Access Online. It's like stripping off everything that's not you,
Mm-hmm.
and then allowing you just to be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And through questions, lots of different ways.
Yeah. So in terms of, like exactly what we're talking about here with like the fearless visibility and the vulnerability and all these things that are required to show up, what would be like a basic Access Consciousness tool to start moving in a more forward motion?
Yeah. I have one question that I still ask. Am I repeating on you?
Are you what? No, I hear you good. I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. It's just that okay. Yeah. So one of my favorite is if I was fully being me, who, what, where, when, and everything that's not basically uncreate and destroy it and return to the sender. And that there actually changes so many things. I really ask that every time before I start to work something out. Because it actually takes away all the me.
Yeah. And then whenever the energy that's not you, it just seems like that would create the space to kind of open up and feel more confident, because if you are just being yourself, then, and you're confident in that, right? Then that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, yeah, actually all of us, when we're truly being who we are, you don't have any of those, you don't have the lack of confidence, all of that stuff's not there. Because actually we're and brilliant. And when we get to that space of being willing to know that, it changes so much.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh. Because when we start living in that space of the question, right, as opposed to filling in all the answers of how we think things should be and show up, and the whys, right? Like, why is this happening? What is it? Blah, blah, blah. It just seems like that there would just be more of like a lightness, right? Like, is that kind of what you're saying? Like, because Steve, when I'm hearing you say that, I feel like I think that there's like a sense of spaciousness that happens around it. That,
absolutely. The space is one of the most beautiful things. A lot of us who are quite sensitive to other people's energies also pick up all of that stuff. So when you're in front of a camera, you're aware of the future. You're aware of every person who's ever going to see the future. You know, like right now, I'm aware of the energy of everyone who's ever going to watch this in the future. And so it can actually get quite overwhelming with your energy.
Yeah.
And what I realized is if you truly just go to that space of being, none of that's actually relevant. You don't have to try to be something you're not. And relax into that. And that's totally different space available.
Yeah. Can we, I would love to talk a little bit more about what you just said, though, about the being really sensitive, because I feel like the people who are watching this mostly are female entrepreneurs. There might be a guy here or two, but also a lot of us are really creative people and already, sensitive people. And then the creativity, I feel like, adds a layer of this kind of extra vulnerability. Is there anything in particular for this group of people, like for, creatives and maybe people who are, highly intuitive, can do to kind of, not, I don't want to say shield themselves, but, kind of, yeah.
The first thing is to acknowledge that you're aware of everyone else's energy. Because then you know that whatever we will feel anxious. We're always anxious 24/7. And then I came to Access and I realized that was mine. I was just simply aware of all of the people who were anxious around me. And so it was like, oh, none of that's mine. So if you actually look at being sensitive, it's actually about awareness rather than something that's a risk. A lot of people make being sensitive so And it's really
Yeah.
not. It's a gift.
It's a gift.
And so the first thing is to acknowledge, and tell them, what can I do with it? Rather than, oh, I'm so overwhelmed by everything the world's throwing at me. So that would be the first thing. And then I think it's really,
there is a
it's about looking at it and going, okay, I would really love to be out in the world. So what's an easy way for me to do that? Like for me, I realised I love interviewing. Talking to people. And I didn't realise that. Because I thought I was an introvert. And I am in a sense of that's where I get my energy from being by myself. But in terms of what I can create, it's actually fun for me to create with other people. They look at maybe all the things that you thought were true for you, but maybe they're not you.
Yeah. I really love that piece you just said about like if you're in a group of people or you're in this space where you're like, okay, I feel like I'm getting bombarded. I feel like as opposed to allowing yourself to go down to that dark place. You said, what was the question you asked yourself? Like, how can I like readjust the situation, or what was it again?
I have a memory like
That's okay.
One of the things when I'm in where it is very distracted is I just ask, okay, how much space can I be?
And I love that.
Our bodies know what that is. We just expand our space.
Yeah. I love that. Like how can we, yes. Oh, sorry. I'm just absorbing exactly what you're saying right now.
Yeah, because when you're a lot of space, then other people's points of view aren't so close to you, basically. They're not so in your face. And that is what allows then you to be you in the situation that you're in.
Mm-hmm. I just want to take a quick second right here. We have a couple people who are posting on the side who are saying we're feeling a little bit of an echo, and I'm not sure if it's coming from me or if it's coming from you, and I'm not sure how
from me, because
that.
Do you want me to log back in?
You could try if you want to see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking that it's quite there and annoying. Yes. So how about I just log back in?
Okay.
And you can
all right. I'll stay right here with everyone. All right. So Lisa's taking a little bit of a break. We're going to come back in a second whenever she tries to resolve her sound issue that's happening. But I would love to hear from you guys. What kinds of things are you thinking right now? What types of questions do you have? Because Lisa is a plethora of information for, plugging in headphones, that's a great idea. But Lisa has a plethora of information on this subject of really clearing out this negative energy that we have when it relates to our own visibility. So if you have any questions in particular, you can ask them right now and then we can address them in a minute. I do have headphones, so I'm going to plug these in and see if that helps from my end, but I don't think that it's me, but I'll try. We'll see what happens. Plug this in here. All right, let's see. What's happening with our sound now?
Okay, I'm back. How's that?
It's a little bit better. Yeah, I think, is it better, everybody? Are you guys there? What do you think? I think it sounds better, so I think we should be good.
Cool.
We'll just keep rolling with it and see what happens. I don't remember exactly where we were in that conversation, but like I said, the biggest thing that I'm taking right now is the space. Like, how can we create space around ourselves to where we can kind of like hold the container for being seen, right? For just being like, okay, here I am. I'm standing here. I'm cool with like, I don't want to say like an energetic boundary, but to some degree it kind of is, right? Or is it kind of more like
Actually, this is interesting. It's not a boundary. Mm-hmm. It's actually like I expand my space out pretty much bigger than the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually, you make yourself so much space that there's actually technically how it works is there's so much space between your molecules when you ask for this that anything of people's judgment or anything of their points of view, it's got nothing to hit against. And so it becomes irrelevant to you. And this is what actually I think we should talk about is if you make other people's points of view irrelevant, it's literally like you just go, okay, is this relevant to me? And if it lightens up, then it's like, okay, no, it's nothing to do with me. And if it gets contracted and heavy, then you can ask some more questions. But most of the time, the stuff we're aware of is not relevant to us. And so when you actually go to that thing of, okay, you know, all these thousands of people that are going to see my picture or whatever it might be, is that relevant to me? And actually their point of view is not relevant to you unless you make it so. And so that's another way of creating space.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that oftentimes the things that we think are our own kind of beliefs and ideas maybe don't even necessarily belong to us, right? I remember hearing something about access consciousness before about like for example, for me, I would honestly, I live in Southern California, and it can be kind of crazy driving sometimes. And I would get all this anxiety, and I used to love driving, but then just recently I started getting all this anxiety when I was driving. And then I remember I would stop and ask myself the question, like, okay, like how much of this anxiety is actually mine versus how much of this is what's happening with other people, you know, with all these crazy drivers on the road, how much of it's theirs versus how much of it's mine. And right, and when you ask that question, all of a sudden it would kind of lighten up for me. And I thought, that's interesting. So maybe it wasn't even me who was the one creating that.
You know how I know that that's so true? Because I use that question a lot. Is this mine? And just ask to return it all to sender. And when you do that, you get more space. And I was driving once and I was obsessed about ice cream. And I'm looking at it going, that's really weird. I don't even like ice cream that much. And I was like, okay, it's not mine.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you ever want to test this, once I was way out in the country where there was literally just no people, it was so beautiful. And as I drove closer into the city, the thoughts in my head got louder and louder and busier and busier and more and more. And out in the country, there was nothing in my head. And I was like, oh, this is really how it works. There's, you know, we are not think people naturally. And it's only when everyone's thinking comes together that you end up with that sort of intensity of overwhelm and sensitivity of all the different things. I want to address a question that Ren has asked about how I maintain my positive thoughts on a longer term. Because actually, for me, it's not about positive thoughts. What it is about is choosing how would I like my day to be? And from that space, it's like, okay, so what adventures can I have today? What's possible today that I've never imagined? And asking these kinds of questions. So I'm not about trying to talk myself into something. You know, if I'm having a crappy day, my first thing is this mine? Because mostly it's not. Like I've realized, it's really weird. I've actually realized I'm happy. And that, you know, like actually all that stuff that's not happy, basically if I'm not being happy, I'm not me. And that would be true for me. If you're not happy, it's not you. And so that thing of is this mine and return it to sender. Because if you're trying to talk yourself into being happy, that's hard work actually. And I did a lot of affirmations over the years and things. And in the end, I was just like, this doesn't really do it for me. But the questions do because they create that bigger space.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel like there's been so many times in my life where I've been kind of in like a rut and felt like guilt around being in a rut, or felt like right? Like I was trying too hard to fix myself. And then as soon as I stopped thinking that there was something that there needed to be fixed, there was no longer anything that needed to be fixed. It's like, okay, well, and you know, or like, for example, like if I was, you know, sitting home on a Friday night feeling sorry for myself, and then all of a sudden I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go dance with my friends. It's like just the energy of choosing to do something different totally flipped everything around. Right. So I want to ask you then, go ahead.
Can I just say one thing? So one of the things when you're in that space of you think everything's wrong about you is literally to ask what's right about me that I'm not getting. Because, I mean, I had that, you know, I came out of a corporate environment where my ideas were just too different for them a lot of the time. And I was always being made wrong. And I was always aware of the elephant in the room. So I was always saying the wrong thing, you know, out loud. And it was like, and so what's been really interesting is like when you get to that space of, well, what's right about me rather than what's wrong with me that I have to fix, it's a totally different world out there. And you actually become willing for people to see you because you realize that they're not seeing everything that's wrong about you. They're actually seeing what's cool and amazing about you.
Yeah, it sounds, oh my gosh, I love that, because whenever you're asking yourself those questions, you're once again getting those answers. They're like, okay, well, here's all the things that are right about me. And you're walking out into the world with that, as opposed to all the other crap, right? Of the like, what's wrong with me? You know, you know, all that junk that like, whenever you walk around, you're like, here, I remember I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. I remember hearing him talk about this too, as well as like how you hold yourself. And I'll turn sideways, but I remember him talking about how the difference between like, lack of confidence or depression and confidence is an inch. He said like, this is depressed, this is confident, like literally an inch in your body. And when you start asking yourself
questions, it's like all of a sudden you start like, oh, I can stand up a little bit more straight. It just because it just does something. I don't know on what kind of like physical energetic level that stuff happens. That's not my, you know, area of expertise, but it does happen. And I also see that happen with my clients too, where it's just like if you make someone laugh, all of a sudden they go from like, oh, I'm a little scared to like, ha ha ha, you know, and there's just this opening, like a physical opening in the body that happens. And whenever you can do that, oh my God, that's magnetic. And that's when the great photos happen. And that's when just the energy can come back to you. So if people are scared of like, oh, I don't want to put myself out there, I'm whatever, but it's like whenever you hold like literally like this goddess space energy of standing up straight and being like, cool, come to me. You're just like asking like, what great things can come to me today? But you have to be open to it. And like I said, when you're literally slouched down all the time, I teach yoga too, so that's why this is kind of a thing that I focus on a lot. But you know, whenever we're doing this, we're literally like hoarding our energy and closing ourselves off, closing our hearts off, closing our energetic space.
There's something I want to talk about here actually, because a lot of people think they have to protect themselves from the world, basically. And what I've seen is actually the less protection I employed and the more willingness to be me, you know, it's actually the awareness that protects you. It's not holding things in tight. It's not hiding that protects you. It's awareness. Like I'll know if there's some weird energy near me and I will do whatever's required to change that or, you know, or move away from it or whatever. And it's like, we think to keep ourselves safe, there's this thing of, I'll just keep it all contained.
Like, you know, like don't show any of it.
Yeah, and actually that does not keep us safe, because what it does is contract our space to such a tiny space that we're not aware of anything except the contraction, and that's horrible, you know? So it's like, if you're really willing to actually expand out your energy and expand your awareness way out, you'll know, you know, if something crazy is going to happen, and you won't be in the way, you'll be somewhere else, because you're actually ability aware of what's coming. So it's a totally different space to actually operate from in the world, and it does allow you to be a lot more visible, because all of a sudden you're not always operating from that space of the fear, you know.
Can you I remember a few minutes ago you mentioned, and talking about this topic of expansion and opening up our space, you said something to the tune of, I expand my energy like beyond the universe. Can you give us like an example of what that would be like in your practice?
I literally just ask, how much space can I be? And then if it's not enough space, if I still feel a bit crunchy, then I'm like, okay, how much more space can I be? And how much more? And how much space is beyond that? And how much more? And if you guys can do it with me right now as I'm talking about this, it's just like, how much more space can you be? Because if you, and for fun, I'll just go, oh, how much can I be as much space as the multiverses? You know, because it's just fun for me. It's a play. Yeah, and that energy there then really allows you to realize that you're aware of everything, and none of it's relevant to you unless you make it so. And when you play with that, it's just such a different space to come into the world with, you know, because you're not aligning and agreeing with all the people who are making themselves small.
Oh man, that is such a huge piece right there. What is that, the saying that says like you're the sum of like the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? Something like that. And I think about that a lot. And in my business practices, as I've gotten to know people like you and other entrepreneurs, it's like whenever you spend your time with people who are also kind of willing to put themselves out there and willing to be more open, that continues the ripple effect of spaciousness and of openness.
Yeah, look, it does. And, you know, sometimes I hear that saying and I go, like, a lot of people would judge themselves for the people they hang out with, especially maybe, you know, their partner or someone is not, you know, maybe living the most joyful, happy life. And you know what I'm saying? So I always look at that, and I talk to people about it in the way of, and what if you're bigger than all of that as well? Like, what if you don't have to be the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with? What if you can actually really have your own reality of how you would like to be in the world? And that does over time change the people you hang out with.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But it's like you can lead it. It's not like you have to be at the effect of it. Maybe that's something
I love that. That's so true. That's such a great perspective to have on it, because I hadn't even thought about it that way before. Lovely. Love it. Oh my gosh. I can't even, oh my gosh, I'm just like so flooded with awesome information that I don't even know like where to
I know, because
where to go.
because we've been talking so much about space, you're a lot of space now. And this is always the talking about it. People go to be space and then it's just like, oh, it's beautiful here, you know.
Yeah.
There's one thing I would like to talk about actually, and that is that a lot of people think they're afraid to put themselves out there. And fear and excitement are actually the same physiologically. And so you have to ask the question, am I afraid or is it excitement? Because what I realized for so much of me is it's excitement. There's no fear there. And a really simple way to tell actually right now, like ask yourself, the last emergency you had to deal with, did you actually deal with it and get it sorted out? Or did you have a meltdown and just fall in a heap on the floor? Because if you got it sorted out, you know, then you have no fear, basically. And so when you start to look, because I thought I was afraid of just about everything. And what I realized was, no, that's not true. You know, it really not true at all. And so now I don't even really allow myself to go to that space. And I don't allow myself to go to that space of, oh my gosh, you know, I should be afraid to put this in the world. It's like, right, where in the world would this like to go? You know, like with my projects. And it's such a different space to create from. Because you're not looking at, oh my gosh, will anyone like it? You're looking at what's possible with this? Where can it go that I've never imagined? Totally different energy.
And where can it be a benefit in the world, as opposed to us like hoarding the energy and thinking like, oh, it has to be this way, or has to show up that way, or I have to make this much money or whatever. Like, where can it really go and help people? You know, like where can it really expand to? Another point I wanted to make about this too is kind of on the yoga trip again. I don't remember which yogi said it. I want to say it was like Paramahansa Yogananda, some wise, you know, guru, said the only difference between anxiety and joy or excitement is the breath. And a lot of the time, whenever we're anxious or we're stressed or we're not breathing. And the thing is, we just breathe through it. Once again, that kind of, I think it's a physical way of opening up the space again. Like, let me take a deep breath and think like, okay, this is actually kind of fun. Or how can I approach this in a different way that'll make it a little lighter for me or for whoever else is in the vicinity.
Yeah, it's so true. One of the fun things about that is I was running a event in Oslo once, and I was actually playing with people, bringing them out the front, and because a lot of people were wanting to be able to speak to an audience, so we were just playing with that in different ways. And one lady literally was holding her breath as she was speaking, and she just kept talking and holding her breath. And I noticed how the entire audience then held their breath with her, waiting for her to breathe. And it was like, oh, and I actually stopped her and I'm like, okay, would you just breathe? Because like everyone else would like to take a breath. And it's so interesting that when we're not relaxed and we're not comfortable with ourselves, that's what we do, is we hold our breath as a way of sort of trying to contain and control everything. And it's so not required. And yeah, so that thing of breathing is a really cool thing. Yeah. Okay, and then I want to talk about Mallory's question, because she's saying that she'd like to start a blog and it just hasn't happened, and partially through fear of putting herself out there. And it's like starting is the biggest hurdle. And I'd like to talk about that because I mean, you know, I'm writing a book at the moment and it's called Stop Waiting, Start Creating, because a lot, right? And what I would say to you, Mallory, is start with small things. So start with putting a couple of ideas on Facebook and seeing what response they get. Then write something a bit longer, post the link to that. And it's like, you know, if we don't make other people's judgment relevant to us, then we get to do and choose and create what we would like to do and choose and create. We get to lead. And so part of this really is about being willing to lead and being willing for people not to like your ideas and go, that's totally okay if you don't like my ideas. Because like, I don't really have a point of view. You can think what I'm talking about today is absolute rubbish and I'm going to go have a nice life. You know? I don't have something that, oh my gosh, you have to agree with me. Because if I did that, then it would be a small world. Because imagine if we all agreed with each other, you know?
How boring.
Yeah, exactly. It's about just allowing your ideas to be in the world, and the people who are interested in those will find them through you being who you are. Because what I've noticed is the more I be who I am, the less I have to promote.
Oh
as
yeah, I
well.
love that.
Yeah, it's actually very fun.
'Cause
I
you're
love it
just
too.
sharing, yeah, because you're just sharing freely. Then you're not thinking like once again that energy of like, I gotta have it this way, I gotta do it that way. You're just sharing, and that's all it has to be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So if you take it away from the I have to do something
Mm-hmm.
to, oh, would it be fun for me to put this out there today? Would it be fun to see what people think about this idea? I wonder how much conversation I can create around this idea. That actually is a different space of creating as well. Because then you're not
Mm-hmm.
looking for people to agree with you or and you're not looking for all the people who are going to hate you. You're just going, cool, I wonder what this will create in the world. You know, that
I love
energy of,
that.
yeah, actually the energy of wonder is something that's taken me a long way as well. Because instead of like having a fixed point of view, it's just like, oh, I wonder how this is going to show up. I wonder what could be possible. And that curiosity actually creates a lot.
You know what? This completely reminds me of. I had a dance teacher in college. Her name was Tandy Beal, and she's amazing. She actually did a lot of the work for. You guys remember The Nightmare Before Christmas? She actually choreographed the dances that were happening in that film with the puppeteers and all that stuff. Amazing, right? And I remember
Mhm.
having talking to her one time after class about what I was going to be doing after college, and that's exactly what she said. I said, like, what one thing should I remember, or should I do, or should I kind of, if I had an idea, what would it be? And she said, maintain your sense of wonder, like maintain your sense of awe and curiosity and looking at the world and think about what is possible, as opposed to, once again, like what we're talking about, closing yourself down. And I just remember that.
Yeah.
And that brings that up again for me, like thinking like, yeah, that really does change the energy. Like when you can just walk around, like I try really, not actually, I don't even try that hard anymore. I just happen to do this now where I walk around and I just appreciate like the hillside, and I appreciate the cool air, and get to be in awe of the space that I get to live in, even if it's something that somebody else may not like whatever. How can I maintain the sense of awe no matter what?
You know, this is a really cool thing. And it actually relates back to also what we were talking about with space. Because I once did, have you ever done a meditation walk?
Yes.
Yes, so you know what I'm. So for those of you who don't know, a meditation walk is where you walk like 30 meters in an hour. So it's this really slow. And I did this at an access class in New Zealand a few years back. And when Gary Douglas, who's the founder of Access, asked us to do it, I was like thinking in my head, oh my God, that's so boring, an hour to walk 30 meters. And I was just having, all this crazy stuff in my head. But I did it, and it was incredible because what I realized was I had as much space in that walk as what I would have if I went to the beach by myself. And I asked him about it, and I was like, okay, so how can that be? What went on there? And he said, well, when you go to the beach, you're willing to receive from everything. You're willing to receive just everything that's there. And then he said, because I was saying, well, how come I don't have that in the city? And he's like, well, you're not willing to receive from the concrete and from the power lines and from the cars and from the buildings and all the stuff we judge as not as nice, right?
Yeah.
And it was such a cool thing because what I realized was, and now like I can be in the city and it's as much space for me as being at the beach, which is such a gift, right?
Yeah.
And it's like if you're willing to receive everything with just like, okay, here it is. It's just interesting. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just, oh, here it is. It's totally different. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And you know, if everything we've talked about here about the space and being visible, it's like when you are that much space, it's a way of like having comfort with the visibility actually. You know, and like I went to San Francisco recently and I was just walking around like I owned the whole city because it was fun for me.
Yeah.
People were literally like staring at me. And I just thought it was funny because I was just doing it for curiosity to see what it would create. And it's like, what if we could always just be that space that truly is us? And I get that people are looking because it's so rare to have someone who has a lot of the sense of who they are, you know? And so this is the thing of when you be this, you don't have to try. It's just there.
It's just natural there. Oh my gosh. That makes me want to take a deep breath and just say yes and relax into it. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we're getting close to our time. I know everybody is busy and rocking their business in their world. But I just wanted to ask you one last question. So if you had one piece of advice or one kind of tool that you felt like was really going to help people move forward, like more than anything? Of course, everything we talked about is totally useful, but just like one little kind of thing that they could walk away with today. What would that be?
It's the willingness to be different, actually, because everything we're talking about is about being who we truly are, and none of us are the same. And so what I see is so many people trying so hard to fit into something, you know, and trying to fit into how someone else is being successful, or so, how someone else is creating. Like, I love it. You know, people ask me all about my creative process, and there's always this energy that comes up, and I go, are you trying to ask me all these questions so that you can do it my way? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, no,
That's not how it works.
If you're like willing to be different, if you're willing just to go, here I am, without a point of view, that will take you so far. And I know this from personal experience, because, you know, there would have been a time when I couldn't have sat on here and talked to you. I would have been so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And now it's just easy, you know, it's so easy.
Yeah, it's just like and have a conversation. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So that willingness just to be different and to acknowledge that your difference isn't wrong. You know, when I first went to Access, one of the things I learned was, I'm not wrong, I'm just different. And I used to repeat that as a mantra, because I was so used to thinking I was wrong. And when I really realized, no, I'm just different, oh my gosh, such a different world. Yeah, so that's the thing, probably, that just enjoy being different. It's actually quite fun. You know, and now I just find it entertaining if people stare at me because I've done something quite different. I'm like, okay, cool, I got your attention, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
What can I do?
I love that too.
Now?
Yeah, because it's like, I love what you're saying too, because it's like, it doesn't have to be good or bad. You know what I mean? If you could just show up and just say, hey, cool, here I am. Maybe I am a little bit different. And that is what makes me me. That's what makes me unique. And that's what is right about me, is that I get to just be myself and not worry about what other people are thinking.
Yeah, and that's actually the thing people will want to pay you for. You know, we didn't really talk about money today, but what I've noticed is the more I'm me, the more people are willing to give me money. And it's so easy. It's not a sell, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Because I'm not sure what yeah, well, too, because the same thing too. It's energetic. If you're willing to just be yourself and say, okay, what I have to offer in the world is wonderful, and if you like it, go ahead, come on to me. And if you don't like it, then that's okay. Go do your thing with someone else. Like, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Because you're just standing in your truth, and that's a really like sexy, confident energy when people are just like, here I am. Like someone, I'm gonna keep it real, like right now. I am obsessed with Justin Timberlake, and I have been for the longest time. And I was trying to figure out, like, what is it about him? And it's because he's just so like confident and charismatic and just kind of unapologetically himself. That is attractive. That's incredibly attractive. And there's so many other people that I could, you know, go on about are very similar, but learning how to hold that space of like, I know that I'm wonderful and I'm great and I'm perfect and I'm whole and I'm complete, like just as I am. I don't have to try to be someone or do someone else's process or do anything. It's just like, all I have to do is just kind of shed the BS and just allow myself to show up.
Yeah. You know, this week, Elon Musk put out the Tesla Powerwall. And that video is so worth going to watch, because he stands up on stage, he announces this thing that literally can change the world in amazing ways. And he's like giggling and chatting, and it was awesome. There was no stiff presentation. It was just such a beautiful thing to see someone who's clearly brilliant, clearly amazing, just stand up and go, here's my thing. Do you want it? In such a soft, gentle way.
Humble.
You know, it's so worth watching that video. If you ever want to know what that sort of being you in the world is, that was a really cool example of it.
What is that one again? Let's see if we can share it with everybody. Maybe you can type it in the chat box and we can share the link to it, or maybe we can find it on YouTube, or we.
Yeah, I'll find it while I'm talking to you. Yeah. That was just like, how cool is that? Here it is.
Yeah,
so
I can't wait to see that. Does anybody have any questions here before we're kind of coming to a close? We're going to be ending the call here soon. So if anyone has any last things or comments or questions or anything, then go ahead and let us know now. And there will be a replay available. It'll be sent via email, and it'll also be up on YouTube pretty soon too, as far as much as I understand. So if you guys want to check out the video again, you can do that.
Can I mention one thing?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So one of my programs that I run is called Writing Wild, and it's very much about writing every day or every week, whichever you choose, and being more you. And I give people all sorts of really fun, playful things that actually allow them to explore who they are in a really safe environment. So if anyone is interested in that, there's a little taster, a free taster at www.creativitylab.tv/writingwild. And it's just,
Maybe we can share that in a little link down here at the bottom too.
yeah, I can.
You can. The magic of Webinar Jam.
It's so good, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really cool. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Go check that out, everybody. If you have a chance, if you're interested in writing, if you're interested in just self-expression, it would just be such a great thing to do for yourself, and not even just for your business, but just for your life and for your creative expression. I think
the cool thing is, if you do it for one thing, it goes into everything.
Yeah,
you know,
it all bleeds. It all bleeds into one another, right?
Yeah, because you are part of your business, and so what you're being has a huge impact on that.
Love it. All right. Well, if anybody has any more questions, once again, let's just kind of take a minute or two here to ask, and then we're going to be closing soon. It's about 12:45, so we're running a couple minutes later than anticipated, but that's quite all right.
Can I suggest one more thing for everyone to play with?
Oh yeah, of course.
Well, yeah. So what if, like, just for today, you actually did one thing that took you just a little further out of your comfort zone than you've done yesterday? Like, one of my questions is, okay, what's it going to take for me to be greater than I was yesterday? And just that simple question takes you into this space of being more. And like, the more I can, like, I don't want to say be uncomfortable all the time, because that can get tiring occasionally. But if you just push yourself that little bit further, when I say push in a very kind, gentle way, I'm not suggesting you do outrageous things just to prove that you can be uncomfortable. But like, just take yourself a little bit further than you've been willing to the day before, and a little bit further. And that's really how I've done it. It's not been one big leap. It's been a whole lot of tiny steps that have just taken me from this space of being like, don't look at me, to hi, Yeah. And yeah, it's so different. So yeah, I would say don't expect of yourself that you're going to take one giant leap and it's all going to be perfect. Just play with it in the gentlest, most fun ways you can find. And playing is the operative. It's not about working it hard or trying hard or any of those things.
Yes, it's all about playfulness. I feel like that's the cure for everything in life. Just find a way to play with it, and everything is going to be a lot easier, a lot better in the long run.
Absolutely, that's true for me, definitely.
I found that. I've definitely found that in my own life as well. All right. Well, it's the time has come for us to sadly end this call, but I feel like we've all learned some amazing tools from Lisa here. And if you want to check her out, once again, you can go to creativitylab.tv, and you can also check out her Writing Wild free taster class too. There's a little link over here on the right, and there will be a webinar replay available shortly thereafter this call. I will send it to you, Lisa, so you can share it with your people and otherwise. So thanks everyone for being here. I hope that you all got something out of it. I know I did for sure. And I hope you all go out and share yourselves and create more freely in the world. So, and be sure to stick with us for the rest of the summit, because there's going to be 9 more amazing ladies who are going to be sharing awesome content with how to show up and be fearless. So thanks again, Lisa, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks for being on.
Take care.